Hi, everybody. Here we are, gentle reads, probably at the wrong day and most assuredly at the wrong time. But here's the thing, I don't know what day it is, and I often don't know what time it is. Does anyone really know what time it is? I don't think so. Does anybody really care anymore? Probably not. But we are at chapter 10 in our gentle reads of Blessings in Disguise, one of the Sugar Creek Amish mysteries, written for us by Nancy Mayo. And our heroine, Cheryl, has just met the new bus driver who is kind of creepy. Chapter 10. Can I help you? Cheryl took several steps back, trying to calm her racing heart. Was she looking at Jerry Harper? Did he know what she was up to? The driver's face relaxed and he smiled. Sorry, didn't mean to sneak up on you like that. Just thought I'd come in and see what all the fuss is about. My passengers sure love this place. The man had a slight twang, and Cheryl tried to place it. Abby and her husband had lived in Nebraska, but the driver sounded as though if he originated from Texas. Of course, he could purposely be trying to misdirect her. I'm glad you came in, she managed to say. Please look around, if I can help you find anything. Thanks, ma'am. Might pick up something for the wife. As he walked away, Cheryl looked him over. The height was about right. He had brown hair, just like Jerry Harper, but Abby had said Jerry had a medium build. The bus driver was definitely pot-bellied. Could it be fake? She wasn't sure, but it was certainly possible. The driver turned and caught her looking at him. Cheryl busied herself helping a small group of women looking over a display of candy. Several local Amish people, including Naomi, made different kinds of candles and candies. Naomi's fudge was one of the best Cheryl had ever tasted. She also sold peanut brittle and toffee made by another local woman. All three types of candy were popular, not only with tourists, but with the citizens of Sugar Creek. As she packaged up the women's choices, she kept her eye on the driver. He appeared to just be looking around. At the moment, he was focused on a display of Amish books. Excuse me. Cheryl turned her attention to an elderly gentleman who was standing a few feet away. How much is this? It's not marked. He held up another Amish doll just like the one she'd sold earlier in the week. Her anonymous friend had struck again. Sorry, it's $20. The man nodded. My daughter would just love this. Thanks. She helped the man and had just checked out the women who bought the candy when the driver came up to the register. I'll take this cookbook for my wife. He winked at her. Not sure this will help her much. She sure ain't the best cook in the world, but I love her anyway. He put a small box of fudge on top of the book. And this for me. Nothing I like more in the world than fudge. My wife tried to make it once. Decided it should be healthy. Used beans in it. Shook his head. Decided it should be healthy. Beans in fudge. Not only tasted bad, I had to eat it with a spoon. Put it in the trash when she wasn't looking. I keep praying she'll never try that again. Cheryl nodded. More than anything, she wanted to see the man's arm. Would she find the identifying tattoo? But how could she get the driver to remove his jacket? Several scenarios went through her head, but all of them seemed to point to disaster. So, you're new, she said. I mean, there was another bus driver before you. Yes, ma'am, Charlie. He retired. Loved this route. It was hard for him to leave. How long have you been with the company? Been driving a bus for about 15 years in Dallas. Moved my family here about 6 months ago. My wife's mama lives in Canton and she's sickly. Have to say, driving this bus is a lot more relaxing than running around in Dallas. I almost feel retired. Howard Knisley. Howard Knisley. Cheryl shook his hand and introduced herself. Either the man was who he said he was, or he was a pretty good actor. Frankly, she just couldn't be sure. She rang up his selections, handed him his bag, and thanked him for his purchase. It was nice to meet you, Howard. The merchants in Sugar Creek really appreciate the business you bring in. He smiled and nodded. I'm glad to hear it. Maybe one of these days you can do something for me." He stared at her for a moment and then turned and walked out of the store, clutching his bag. Startled, Cheryl watched him head back to the bus. He took up his usual stance, leaning against the side of the huge vehicle, his eyes trained on the store. "Are you all right?" Lydia asked. "You look funny." Cheryl shook her head, trying to refocus her attention. "Oh, I'm sorry. No, my mind just wandered for a moment. I'm so glad you came in when you did. I appreciate your help." Today, Lydia was wearing a simple pale blue dress, and her long black hair was in a bun, with a white prayer covering her head. Lydia had a simple, almost classic beauty. Even though she looked cute in the casual clothes she'd worn yesterday, there was something almost elegant about her in her Amish outfit. "You're welcome," Lydia said with a smile. "I know I need to finish the inventory." "Will you get it done today?" "It should only take me a couple of hours." "Good. Let me know if you need anything." While Lydia went to work on the inventory, Cheryl straightened the shelves, checking for any other gift items that may have been added without her knowledge. But everything seemed normal. A little before noon, Esther came in just as Lydia completed her work. The two girls talked a bit, and Lydia promised to come back at 3 so she and Esther could go to the bookstore. One of Sugar Creek's nicest Christian bookstores, by His Grace, was just down the street from Swiss Miss. Run by Ray and Marion Berryhill, it was a favorite of the local residents. Although a lot of the older Amish were somewhat suspicious of fiction, many of the middle-aged women and younger girls loved the Amish-themed books that had become so popular in the last several years. Naomi had expressed some concern about the romantic elements or the stories that included characters leaving the community, but Esther had shared with Cheryl that she'd caught her mother with her nose in one of her books when she thought no one was looking. The Berryhills, an African-American family in their late 30s, were expecting their first child. After trying unsuccessfully for years to conceive, the pregnancy was not only a surprise, but a source of great joy. The couple was very popular in Sugar Creek because of their sweet spirits and generous natures, so many residents were rejoicing along with them. Some of the Amish women had dropped off homemade baby clothes, quilts, and blankets as gifts for the little girl who was expected within the next couple of months. By the time Naomi and Levi arrived, Cheryl was ready to go. They left the store and walked down the street to Yoder's Corner. The rain was now a light sprinkle. Naomi carried an umbrella that she and Cheryl shared. When they reached their destination, they found there was a short wait before they could be seated due to the popularity of the restaurant. It was not only a favorite with tourists, but residents of Sugar Creek also loved its old-fashioned charm and homey recipes. They waited for 15 minutes before Greta, August's wife, showed them to a table. Greta was just as stout as her husband, but also only about 5 feet tall. August was a few inches taller, but was also rotund. Their round, friendly faces always sported a smile, and their enthusiastic dispositions made their customers feel good. Before she left, Mitzi had taken Cheryl to Yoder's for dinner and introduced her to the couple. Greta had shaken Cheryl's hand with gusto. "I know you will enjoy our food," she said, while patting her stomach with her other hand. "As you can see, we sample everything to make sure it is delicious." Her hearty laugh had endeared her to Cheryl. The Yoders were a great couple, and the entire town loved them. "I will send the waitress right away," Greta said as they sat down. "Until your food comes, you must sample our new apple fritters. I will send some to your table as a gift, yeah?" "Thank you, Greta," Naomi said with a smile. "I'm sure they will be delicious. We have your raspberry jam. Do you need it now, or should I bring it in after we eat?" Greta patted Naomi's shoulder. "You must eat first, then we will do business. We have little left. I am hopeful we will make it through the lunch rush." She smiled at Cheryl. "Our customers love Naomi's jams and jellies. Ah, we could serve cardboard biscuits, but with Naomi's touch, everyone would eat them as if they were manna from heaven." Naomi snorted. Oh, Greta, your biscuits do not need any help from my jam. They are the best in the county, and you know it. Greta threw her hands up in the air. See how she is? I cannot give her a compliment without her tossing it back at me. She laughed and toddled off to take care of her next customer. When the busy waitress finally arrived at their table, the trio was ready to order. Levi asked for a meatloaf sandwich, and Naomi and Cheryl ordered the fried bologna sandwich. Cheryl was still a little skeptical, but she wasn't afraid to try new things. Fried bologna's gross. So, how did your morning go? Cheryl asked when the waitress walked away. I'm afraid I have let you down, Naomi said. After my deliveries, I went to meet the new bus driver from Annie's. He was not at the bus. Cheryl shook her head. You haven't let me down. He wasn't at the bus because he was in my store. Levi's eyebrows shot up and Naomi frowned. He came into the shop? Why? Cheryl recounted her meeting with Howard Knisley. It all seemed perfectly innocent until he got ready to leave. What happened? Levi asked. Cheryl repeated this strange comment the man made right before he walked out the door. Something for him? That, Naomi repeated. This sounds rather ominous. Maybe not, Cheryl said. I mean, it might have been a harmless statement. He was smiling when he said it, and overall, he seemed like a nice man. Naomi considered this. He said he was married? Cheryl nodded. That doesn't mean he's telling the truth. Do you think he could be Jerry Harper? Levi asked. He fits the description. He's the right height and his coloring matches, but his build isn't quite right. Naomi snickered, covering her mouth with her hand. I have seen him. He looks the way Levi will soon if he does not stop eating so much of my caramel pie. Levi snorted. I do not think there is any fear of that, ma'am. I work off all the food I eat. He looked at Cheryl. Do you mean he is fat? She shook her head. No, not really. He has what we refer to as a spare tire. Levi frowned. I do not understand. Why would he sorry guys, hang on a minute. Why would he pick up a tire to your store? Although she tried to hold it back, Cheryl burst out laughing and Naomi joined her. Son, I believe this term is for a man who is built like Mr. Berryhill at the bookstore. Levi looked confused for a moment before breaking out into a wide smile. Now I understand. Cheryl and Naomi exchanged brief looks, and Cheryl forced back a giggle. Could he be trying to change his appearance? Levi asked, obviously ignoring the women's amused reaction to his confusion. I actually thought about that, Cheryl said, but I couldn't stare at his stomach. You know, if we could just see his arm, it would certainly help if he has that tattoo. Getting anyone to remove their jacket in October will be difficult, ain't so? Naomi asked. The friends stopped talking when the waitress brought their drinks along with a plate of apple fritters. Naomi knew the Amish girl who served them, and they talked briefly with her while Cheryl tried to come up with ways to see the bus driver's arm. Maybe it gets hot inside the bus, she said when the waitress left, and he'll take off his jacket. Maybe, Levi said doubtfully. But what if he's wearing long sleeves? And who will go to Canton to take the trip? We can't do it. Why would Mom or I ride the bus? And he knows you. Well, it was a thought. And a good one, Cheryl, Naomi said soothingly. We will keep looking on these ideas, yeah? You might just try one of these fritters, Naomi said. August has outdone himself. The three made quick work of the fritters. Cheryl couldn't believe how good they were. So light and fluffy, they almost melted in her mouth. Yes, well, does anyone want to hear about my morning? Levi asked after eating the last fritter. Both women nodded. Please tell us, Levi, Cheryl said. First of all, I stopped by the corn maze and met Stanley. He looked around as if checking to see if anyone could hear him and then lowered his voice. I would not want to call anyone a liar, but I find it hard to believe this man is related to Bob Gleason. If he is, I will eat my hat. Levi, Naomi said, what does this mean? You must always keep your word. Are you really willing to eat your hat? That cannot be good for your digestion. Ma'am, shh, was just an expression I learned from Dan Decker at the tack and saddle store. I do not care where you learned it. I will not allow my son to consume headgear. Please do not say that again. Cheryl snorted with laughter. I'm sorry, but it's so funny. Naomi's rather offended expression gave into amusement. I know it must seem silly to you, but we teach our children that they must be people of integrity. If they say they will do something, they must follow through. They must swear to their own hurt, as the Holy Scriptures teach us. And this is certainly not something I want Levi to bind himself to. Levi sighed loudly. All right, ma'am. No matter who Stanley is, I will not eat my hat. He winked at Cheryl, who was still trying to hold back her laughter. Now, may I continue with my story? Yes, please go on, as long as there is no more talking of ingesting your clothing, Naomi said. Cheryl grabbed a napkin at the table and wiped the tears from her eyes. The situation with Abby wasn't humorous, but working with two amateur Amish detectives was proving to be extremely entertaining. Anyway, Levi said, drawing the word out, Stanley does not look related in any way to Bob. The facial structure is different, the coloring, the body structure. Working on a farm teaches you that in most cases, the offspring of any animal has traits that relate to the parents as well as other offspring. Of course, there are rare circumstances that do not make sense, but this is the exception, not the rule. He gazed wide-eyed at his mother, but Cheryl caught the twinkle in his eyes. Except for the time Aaron Svensson's bull broke through the fence and got to one of our cows. That calf did not look like either parent. I am convinced our cow Maggie has a secret boyfriend. Levi, Naomi hissed. My son likes to shock me when he can, but on a farm, these situations are not quite as scandalous as he would like you to think. Levi rolled his eyes. The point is that I have my doubts Bob and Stanley are related. Also, as I said before, I am certain Bob told me he had no brothers or sisters. Something strange is going on there. I am sure of it. But that would mean Bob and Tilly are in on this thing with Jerry, Cheryl said, frowning. That doesn't make any sense. Could he be paying them to let him hide out as Bob's brother? Naomi asked. I don't like to be judgmental about people, but the Gleasons seem to think quite highly of money. That's true, Cheryl said slowly, but would they really help a man who abuses his wife? I have a hard time believing that. The Gleasons aren't perfect people, but they seem kind-hearted, unless they don't know the truth. I guess that could be possible. Before Levi or Naomi could respond, the waitress brought their food. The three prayed silently, and then Cheryl took a bite of her fried bologna sandwich. It certainly didn't taste like the bologna from Cheryl's childhood. A thick slab of fried, spicy, and delicious meat, accented with cheese, sweet relish, and grilled onion, and a soft bun. This is incredible, she said after swallowing her first bite. It tastes more like sausage than bologna. I've never tasted anything like it. And I've lost my place. Naomi smiled and nodded, but didn't say anything since her mouth was full. Ma'am loves these sandwiches, Levi said. I think they're wonderful too, but today I have a craving for a meatloaf sandwich. You must try it sometime. August makes the best meatloaf Except for Mams, of course. Naomi, who had finally swallowed her food, laughed. My son is very generous with his praise. I am afraid my meatloaf does not measure up to August, but it is adequate, and Levi does his fair share to make sure leftovers do not last long. After she took another bite of her sandwich and swallowed it, Cheryl went back to the previous conversation. So, you think Stanley is a possibility? He could be Jerry? Levi nodded. I believe it's possible. His eyes are not brown, but as you have said, he might be wearing contact lenses. And his hair is black, but that does not seem natural to me. You think it might be dyed? Cheryl said. I believe that could be the case. Did you actually talk to him, son? Naomi asked. A little bit, Levi said, but he was taking money from tourists for the maze and was very busy. However, I saw him call someone on his cell phone. A few minutes later, Bob and Tilly showed up, and they kept an eye on me. I finally left. There was something oncoming. Okay, Cheryl said. So now we have 2 suspects. Did you find out anything about the man staying at the village? At the village inn, she asked Levi. He nodded. I talked to Jeb and Molly Baker. Mike Taylor checked in a few days ago, and Jeb said he seemed a little strange. Asked a lot of questions about Sugar Creek and its residents. Says he is interested in buying a business in town, but Jeb thinks he is a little too nosy. Was it Jeb who said this or Molly? Now that you mention it, Ma, it was Molly who seemed the most concerned. Molly thinks everyone is nosy, Naomi replied. I asked her once how her tulips were thriving, and she became suspicious. She enters her tulips in the county fair every year. I believe she thought I was trying to find information so I could outdo her. She is very mistrustful. That is true, Levi said, but I still believe we should keep him on our list. We now have 3 possibilities, Cheryl said. So what do we do now? I suppose we try to eliminate them one by one. Sure. We come down to one we cannot rule out. We still talk to the police chief. Cheryl nodded, but as her friends continued to discuss their next move, Cheryl wondered if they were just spinning their wheels. What if all these men were innocent? And while they were chasing false leads, Jerry Harper found Abby. Were they helping her or actually putting her in even more danger? We will see you next week. Have a glorious 4th of July. Take care.